Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I'm watching this hearing that they're going to be doing on these judge nominations for, the different district judges, federal judges that Trump is trying to get into place because you know how important the judges are. And he's got an awful lot of slots to fill. So they've been working very hard at getting these nominations through. At this point, they're waiting on a couple of the Democrat senators who haven't gotten here yet. So they're waiting on them, and they haven't actually started it. So Lindsey Graham is going to ask Dianne Feinstein if she wants to say something before they get started. So I'm going to kind of do this a little bit differently than I have been doing. I hope I'm going to get it right. But I've got it so that you should be able to hear the sound, and I can also make comments. I hope. So here we go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you well stated, today the committee will consider 5 judicial...
Now, for some reason, her microphone went all wonky along here, but it comes back. Just give it a minute here. But she doesn't look real happy.
Not true.
There we go.
From both California senators. And I asked to place a statement in the record, Mr. Chairman, from Senator Harris.
Without objection.
Thank you. Lawrence VanDyke, nominated to a Nevada seat on the Ninth Circuit, also lacks blue slips from Senators Cortez and Rosen.
Okay, now she's talking about blue slips here. Blue slips are where the Democrats or the minority gets to voice their opinion on people who are being nominated by the president. So she's talking about giving blue slips to say whether or not the minority approves of these people. So in other words, the minority is not approving these people, but the Republicans are going, we don't care. So we're pushing them through anyway. And that's one of the reasons she's a little upset. And especially because a couple of them are up for the Ninth Circuit Court. And you know how liberal the Ninth Circuit Court is. And they're desperate to hang on to that court. But Trump has been putting in people that are not ones that are approved of by the minority. And Diane's not happy about that. In fact, I did a video on that before. So go watch that one and you'll see that was the first time that she was whining about it. But here she is whining in person about it. That was a letter. But here we go.
I'd like to briefly address both of these nominations. Patrick Bumatay is nominated to a California seat on the Ninth Circuit. I very much respect Mr. Bumatay's service to California as a federal prosecutor. I also appreciate the diversity he would bring to the bench. There is concern, however, that Mr. Bumatay does not have the experience required to serve on the Ninth Circuit.
In other words,
we've reviewed Mr. Bumatay's record while he has practiced before the federal courts. His work in appellate courts is extremely limited. It appears that Mr. Bumatay joined the appellate division of the San Diego United States Attorney's Office in March of this year. So his experience practicing appellate law is very short.
We got nothing but that
I would also note
a short time.
That this is the 4th time since President Trump took office that the majority has moved forward with a California Ninth Circuit nominee who does not have the support of Senator Harris or myself. Now, blue slips are the only way that home state senators can assure that nominees who directly impact their constituents are appropriate for the bench. And I very much regret that Republicans have abandoned this practice.
I got to stop here because there she is. She's put down what the blue slips are, and that's the problem there, folks. Yeah, she's upset because typically the senators from that state will be able to say, yes, we approve of this person, or no, we don't. Well, they don't like Trump's picks because Trump's picks are conservatives, and they don't like that. So, of course, she and Kamala Harris have not been approving of Trump's picks for the Ninth Circuit Court because he's trying to switch it over so that instead of having these liberals that just legislate from the bench, he's going to have people that actually uphold the law and interpret the law as it's supposed to be interpreted. So anyway, let's go on. I actually have not heard the rest of this, so this is where I stopped.
I'd also like to briefly address the nomination of Lawrence VanDyke to a Nevada seat on the Ninth Circuit.
Okay, now this is a guy I came in to really watch because he's the one that there was an article on Fox News about, and they reduced him to tears at one point. Let's find out what's going on. And we're going to get a chance. I'll try to pick out some parts of the actual hearing itself and put those in later on.
Mr. VanDyke's record opposing gun violence and the rights of LGBT individuals is far outside the mainstream.
Mainstream. As in, he doesn't agree with us liberals. I mean, really. So it sounds to me like this guy's sounding pretty good. You know, he evidently must support guns and the Second Amendment. And he also must not have a personal preference for the LGBT. I don't know. We're going to find out what that is.
As Nevada Solicitor General, he worked to undermine a 2016 ballot initiative passed by Nevada voters that would have closed a loophole by expanding background checks for private gun sales.
Well, that sounds good. Yeah, you did a good job there because they were trying to limit people's Second Amendment rights. And he was standing up for the Second Amendment. Gee, that sounds like a kind of guy I want on the Ninth Circuit.
Mr. VanDyke's opposition to this background check initiative is unsurprising, considering his long career advocating against controls on guns.
A long-time conservative.
In America. He has called assault weapon bans ineffective.
Which they are.
And he has questioned whether the federal government has the authority to regulate guns in any capacity.
Which they don't because of the Second Amendment.
As Solicitor General of Montana, Mr. VanDyke supported Nevada's ban on same-sex marriage.
Oh, gosh, somebody who upholds biblical principles. Interesting.
A law that Senator Cortez Masto, who was Nevada's Attorney General at the time, ultimately declined to defend. Mr. VanDyke also lacks the support of Nevada's senators.
Yeah, let's see. Who are Nevada senators right now? Yeah.
Partly because he has very few ties to Nevada. He was not born in the state. He did not attend school in the state. He does not live in the state. His only tie to Nevada is the time he spent there as the state Solicitor General.
Well, then he spent time in Nevada. What's wrong with that? I mean, people do move around in the United States, and just because somebody hasn't lived there all their life doesn't mean they can't speak for the people of that community or of that state.
A role he also held in Montana. Now, this is the second time the White House has moved to fill a vacancy on the Ninth Circuit with an individual who has insufficient state ties.
She just doesn't like the people that Trump picks. She doesn't like them.
And it's a state seat. In May, the committee held a hearing on Daniel Bress's nomination to a California seat on the Ninth Circuit. At the time, Mr. Bress had not lived in California for more than a decade. And
a decade? That's 10 years. If you've lived in a place for 10 years, I think you've got a handle on how things go there.
He had only ever practiced law in California for 1 year. Now the committee is moving forward with Mr. VanDyke, despite the fact that he, like Mr. Bress, is an out-of-state nominee with insufficient ties to the state where he will sit as a judge. Given his lack of Nevada ties, the opposition from Nevada senators, I'm concerned that we are moving ahead with Mr. VanDyke's nomination.
Okay, now wait. He's a judge. What difference would it make where he lives? I mean, if he's judging, he needs to know the laws, of course, of that particular state. But, you can read up on that. That's something that you can study on. Why would it make a difference if he's going for the Ninth Circuit Court? Why would he need to have such ties to Nevada? The Ninth Circuit actually covers several states. So why would the tie to one particular state be that important to fulfill that position? I'm a little confused on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that's her statement, all right? That's what she had to say, but listen to this.
Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Murphy.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Of you? When I was chairman of this committee, you and every Republican wrote me a letter saying we must follow the blue slip procedure. You were all very emphatic on that.
Well, now wait a minute. Dianne wrote that letter last time. Remember? We read it. So I know she wrote it. And she was saying, it's got to be followed. We have to do the blue slips. And she whined. She whined about it, okay? And so now it's evidently Leahy that's whining at this point because the Republicans aren't following the blue slip rule. Anyway, let's go on.
I did. It's interesting that you've all abandoned the process that you felt was so important.
Well, we've,
Right.
I think, beat the blue slip horse to death here, and people have been all over the board on both sides.
No, you were very specific. You
Yeah,
said we had
right.
to follow it when there was a Democratic president.
Yeah. I think tried to reach across the aisle where I can to vote for judges, but the blue slip process can't be a veto.
Yeah.
I didn't change
Good
the
for
rules
you.
to a simple majority. You did, not me.
Boom.
And once you did that, to expect the blue slip to be honored under those circumstances is a bit of a stretch. So,
That's fallacious, and you know it.
Senator Murphy.
Boom. Oh, but that's fallacious. Oh, you did it. No, Lindsey Graham says no. Y'all did it. So, yeah, the Democrats tend to want things their way, and now they're accusing the Republicans of having it that way. But frankly, right now, the situation is where the Democrats are using it as like a veto power. Well, that's not what the purpose of it was. And everything they do is obstructionism. So why in the world should we pay any attention to those blue slips? Because they don't want anyone conservative who's genuinely conservative, as it kind of appears this guy is. And honestly, at this point, I don't know much about him because, like I said, I haven't seen the rest of the hearing yet. But this is just, this is how it's going to be, I have a feeling. So, I'm hoping that it gets better, but I know already I've had a little bit of a tip-off that it's not going to. So I'm going to go watch the rest of it all by myself, and we'll see what happens. I'll be back when I have more information. Okay, I've watched it all now, and it was actually a very interesting hearing. It went back and forth between the Democrats and the Republicans. You know how it always works like that. But because it's in the Senate, they were well behaved, and it went along as an adult hearing should actually happen. Although you did get a couple of people that were not very happy with this thing. And it appears that this is a situation. The American Bar Association has customarily done like surveys or an evaluation of lawyers that were being put in as a federal judge of some kind. In this case, they did a hit job on this guy. They really did. And they made it sound like they talked to 60 people or whatever the case, and that they had very negative views of him. Okay, now I'm going to play this part about Hawley. I'm going to have his whole questioning here because he hits some very good points about it. I think his questioning allows VanDyke to have some good responses and to let you know what's going on. But before I get to it real quick, I just want to let you know that there are some factors about this whole report, this ABA report, that just don't seem to ring true. And he's going to bring it up, but let me show you this. Right here is the application, I guess it is. It's like a questionnaire that they give to these nominees, and they have to fill it out. And you know, you can go through and you can read this, but the situation was that this guy ran for the Montana Supreme Court one time, and he ran against a guy who I think was the incumbent, if I recall correctly. And here was an article that was about it. This was back in 2014 when he was running. And it says, as outside spending ramps up in the hotly contested race for the Montana Supreme Court, former Solicitor General Lawrence VanDyke is defending himself against attacks that he is in the pocket of out-of-state corporations and special interest groups. A third-party group supporting incumbent Supreme Court Justice Mike Wheat, yeah, he was the incumbent, is running television ads across Montana accusing VanDyke of being in the pocket of out-of-state special interests and criticizing VanDyke for having 112 out-of-state campaign donors. Now, this is the incumbent here. Now, they're not supposed to be partisan, okay? When you get into the justice system, they're technically not supposed to be partisan, but we know that's not necessarily the reality. Well, this Wheat evidently has Democratic leanings, big time. He was consistently attacked VanDyke for benefiting from outside spending by dark money political groups. Now, that is a term that's used by the Democrats. So I'm really assuming that this was a Democrat guy here and that he was doing a hit job on this conservative VanDyke. VanDyke is very conservative. And when you read through his stuff, I mean, look at the places he went to school when you see his education here. Oklahoma Christian University, and then Montana State, Bear Valley Bible Institute. You know, he's definitely going to be a conservative here with what he's saying. But anyway, back to this. Well, here is what VanDyke had to say. This week, VanDyke countered that attack, claiming Wheat is benefiting from inside spending by lawyers and law firms that have recently had cases before the Montana Supreme Court. VanDyke said dozens of wealthy trial lawyers and corporate law firms with cases pending before the Montana Supreme Court have made individual contributions of up to $20,000 to a political action committee supporting Wheat. Does that sound like what we've seen happening lately around the United States, that this kind of stuff is being exposed? This is an out-and-out pay-to-play on Montana's highest court, VanDyke said. Here we have a sitting justice who will be asked to rule on these cases, and these wealthy attorneys and corporations with cases before him are funneling tens of thousands of dollars into electing him. Definitely sounds interesting. And he points to the Montana Law PAC, the Political Action Committee of the Montana Trial Lawyers Association, which received individual contributions of up to $20,000 from trial attorneys and corporate law firms. According to VanDyke's analysis, more than 80% of the individual contributors and all of the corporate contributors to the Montana Law PAC have active cases before the Montana Supreme Court, or had an active case at the time the contribution was made. All right, 80%, folks. That's pretty significant. So if you wonder why they're trying to keep this guy off of the Ninth Circuit Court, I think this is why. He did a little ad here. You can see. Now, I can't play it because it's got music in it, and if I do, then I'm going to get hit with a copyright claim. So I won't play it, but I'll leave the link down below so you can watch it yourself. It's only 57 minutes long. But essentially, his point in this is people come up to him and they'd say, are you Republican or Democrat? But, you know, when they're a judge, they're not supposed to be either, or a justice. So if he was going for the Supreme Court of the state, then, you know, he shouldn't be either. But yet people don't always understand that, so sometimes they would ask. And he said, well, they're not supposed to be either. And that's his whole point. Judges should follow the law, not the politics. And he really has made a stand on that many times. It appears, if you go through on this, it'll list a bunch of his publications and things. And yeah, he has made a stand on that many times. So anyway, I'm going to play this clip for you, and then I'll come back and kind of summarize.
Let's talk a little bit about the ABA, if we could. Mr. VanDyke, you ran for Montana Supreme Court in 2014. Is that correct?
I did.
And people made contributions and supported you and supported your opponents. Is that correct?
They did, Senator.
Marcia Davenport, Montana attorney, donated to your opponent in the 2014 Montana Supreme Court election. Do you know who Marcia Davenport is?
She's the one who interviewed me for the ABA, Senator.
So she is the one who actually oversaw this process, the ABA letter, is that right?
That is my understanding.
She was the lead reviewer for this, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
She donated to your political opponent in 2014, is that correct?
Yeah, I found that out.
And yet the ABA put her in charge of the review process, am I right about that?
It appears so to me, Senator.
Yeah, I mean, I find that absolutely unbelievable. If you want to talk about bias, if you want to talk about fair procedures, and it probably explains the total ad hominem nature of this disgraceful letter. Let's walk through some of the outrageous allegations that are made here. First of all, I noticed the letter is full of all kinds of frankly, hearsay. I mean, allegations that are not supported with any kind of detail. So I frankly have no idea what they're talking about. But they say things like they interviewed various people. You're accused of not having. First of all, were you told any of the particular people who they interviewed so that you could have some sense of who was accusing you?
No, Senator. When she talked to me, she said she would say, would you be surprised to hear such and such? And I would start to answer, and then she would say, we have to, we don't have much time, and she would want to move on.
The letter says there are reports that your preparation and performance were lacking in some cases. Did they tell you what cases those were?
They did not, Senator.
They say that there are reports that in oral argument you sometimes miss key points. Do you know what oral argument they're talking about?
I do not, Senator.
Neither do I, of course. Neither do any of us. I mean, so there's no way to evaluate anything that is said here. But let me give you an opportunity to respond to some of the more salacious allegations. So the letter says that you are characterizes you as arrogant and lacking in knowledge of the day-to-day practice of law. I was under the impression that you had been an attorney for 14 or more years and that you've been the Solicitor General of 2 different states. Am I wrong about that?
That's correct, Senator.
And have you argued before courts of appeal during that time?
I've argued 24 cases before courts of appeals.
Have you briefed cases during that time?
I have, Senator, many.
Any idea how many you may have briefed?
I'm guessing over my career it's been hundreds of cases.
Are you familiar with the procedures of appellate courts and oral argument?
Very much so, Senator.
The letter also says that you would not commit to being fair to litigants before you, notably members of the LGBTQ community. Can you speak to that? Did you say that you wouldn't be fair to members of the LGBT community?
Senator, that was the part of the letter. I did not say that. I apologize.
It's all right.
I'm sorry. No, I did not say that. I do not believe that. It is a fundamental belief of mine that all people are created in the image of God. They should all be treated with dignity and respect. Senator.
Can you commit today to this committee that you will treat, if confirmed, that you would treat every litigant who came before you with respect and with dignity?
Absolutely, Senator. I would not have allowed myself to be nominated for this position if I did not think I could do that.
Including members of the LGBT community and any other community that has been historically disadvantaged in this country?
Absolutely, Senator.
Mr. VanDyke, all I can say about this letter is that I think it is a shameful exercise in political bias. I have no context or ability to evaluate any of the accusations that are made here, and I think it is past time for the White House to stop granting the ABA special access. I would urge the counsel's office not to make nominees available any longer to the ABA for these interviews. I think that should stop, and I will say that I will no longer consider the ABA's recommendation on any nominee for any position for any reason. They are, as Senator Lee said, a special interest group. They should be treated like any other special interest group, and their shameful performance in this letter, I think, seals the deal beyond any question in my mind. I'm sorry that you've had to go through this, Mr. VanDyke. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So as you can tell, he really got to him when they were talking about making accusations against him. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where somebody made some pretty serious, negative, totally false accusations against you, but I can tell you from personal experience, it's not fun. And when you have people hearing the lies about you and, you're trying your best to defend yourself, but what do? It's like, I would never do that, but yet some people say you would. And that's the rumor going around that you did. And so I can kind of understand what Trump is going through, and I think, this guy has a little taste of it. I feel really bad for him because he's got his family there with him, and yet this is what he's going through. What's really kind of interesting is the whole LBQ thing, whatever. They were accusing him of being biased against that community, and yet the guy sitting over here to the side of him, which really got virtually no time. Now, his name is this Bumatay here, Patrick Bumatay. He's gay. He introduced his husband while he was there. But I will tell you, other than that, he really sounds like a very strong candidate. He's been working with the narcotics and stuff, and he plain out said that he's been working against the transnational criminal organizations. So I kind of liked what I heard about him. And that would be another reason why you could watch this. But, it was interesting on that. This guy's gay, okay? And so when VanDyke interacted with him a couple times, and he considered him his friend, and he talked very nicely to him, and they were chatting like buddies. So it was one of those things. It's like, really? You're trying to say that he would not be nice to this guy because this guy's gay, but yet you're watching him being nice to this guy? So it just didn't hold water. It really didn't. You can disagree with their lifestyle and still treat them with respect. A lot of times, children do things that their parents don't like, but their parents still love them, right? So, that the two things, this idea that the left seems to have, that you must approve of what everybody's doing in order to love them or respect them, it's just not true. You can disagree with somebody, you can disagree with how they're living their lives or what they're doing, but it doesn't mean you don't care for them, you don't respect them as a human being. And that's what always has boggled my mind. I may disagree with what you're doing as a person, but I'm not going to disagree that you still are a human being and worthy of respect because of that. I thought that was kind of a tough time, but I think Hawley did a really good job of bringing out the truth. Now, I have one more section I want to show you, and that is just part of what Ted Cruz had to say. I'm going to spare you the Mazie Hirono thing because she was trying to get, I think, the other guys who she was talking to, and she was trying to get him to tell her how many times he had argued in front of an appeals court. And he said, well, he argued in front of the Ninth Circuit twice. And then she kept asking him the same question. And he kept saying, well, I've argued in front of it twice. And she just it wasn't connecting. Oh, it was, yeah, I'm sparing you that, okay? So if you want to watch the whole thing, again, the link will be down below. But anyway, here is a short little bit of Ted Cruz.
There's been some discussion here that the ABA, that font of impartiality and objectivity, has determined that you are, quote, not qualified to be a federal judge. I find that assessment ludicrous and laughable. So we're looking at a candidate who has served as the chief appellate lawyer for 2 separate states, who has a degree from Harvard Law School, who has authored roughly 100 briefs, if I heard your numbers correctly, who has done 36 oral arguments between courts of appeals and district courts. And the ABA looks at all of that experience and says, no, you are not worthy. You are not qualified to serve as a federal judge. You know, the ABA's process has been subject to a lot of criticism, but I will say their process here is particularly striking. As I understand it, the lawyer the ABA tasked with giving a fair and objective assessment of your suitability for the federal bench is a lawyer named Marcia Davenport, who publicly opposed your candidacy for the Supreme Court of Montana. Is that correct?
And she donated to my opponent, Senator, yes.
So when you were a candidate to be a judge on the Supreme Court, she wrote a check to your opponent.
Yes, it appears so, Senator.
So it would appear that this evaluator, from the outset, is not neutral. She has decided she is on the opposite partisan side of an election than you might be. The ABA entrusted her to engage in a number of anonymous interviews, and then she comes back and says, well, okay, look, he's smart, he's talented, he's a really good lawyer, but we just don't like him. You know, I think the ABA needs to create a new category. You know, there's the crime of driving while intoxicated. Now in the ABA, the new category is practicing law while conservative. And that on its face is a disqualifier. I'd like to read for the committee a statement that was put out today by a number of your former colleagues. We had the privilege of serving with Lawrence VanDyke, President Trump's nominee to the Ninth Circuit, during his 4 years as Solicitor General of Nevada. As the team that worked most closely with Mr. VanDyke on a daily basis, we wish to express our strong disagreement with the American Bar Association's evaluation of this impeccably qualified nominee as not qualified. The ABA's anonymously referenced criticism of Mr. VanDyke's work habits and professionalism could not be more false. He brought to this position an unsurpassed work ethic, a brilliant mind, and a dexterity that enabled him to craft the most persuasive legal arguments in challenging cases. His record of success demonstrates this in countless cases. Mr. VanDyke consistently conducted himself with humility, decency, consideration for coworkers and adversaries alike, and an unfailing sense of fairness. These are the qualities by which 2 states deemed him worthy to serve as their chief appellate advocate, and these are the qualities that we know he will take to the bench. We reiterate our strong endorsement of Mr. VanDyke's confirmation to the Ninth Circuit. It's signed by former Attorney General Adam Laxalt and 5 other senior colleagues of yours in the Attorney General's office. Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent that this be entered into the record.
Thank you.
And Mr. VanDyke, Mr. Bumatay, I look forward, both of you, to your confirmation and to your honorable service on the bench.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad he read those in, you know, that letter from those people in, but it's going to be hard to balance this out. This is a real hit job, and here's the letter itself in case you want to read it. It's not very long, it's a couple pages, but there's no actual details in here. It is very nebulous. It's just people said this. And so, you know, you would think maybe that people who are making their living off of doing law things would actually have some facts in here. They'd build a case for what they're saying. But oh no, it's like hearsay almost. You know, it just, I don't think it would make a very good law argument for this guy, you know, saying that this guy really is all these things, but this is the stuff they said about him. So I can imagine this would be very difficult for somebody to hear. And, you know, it would be hard. Like I said, been there, done that, and it's not fun. And you see it's dated October 29th. So the guy had just gotten it before he had to stand up before Congress and answer questions. I think it was pretty stinky of him to do it this way. And I really agree with what they're saying, that the ABA is more of a lobbying organization and really should be considered like special interest groups instead of something more authoritative, because they do have a point of view. And if you don't line up to that point of view, you know, you're going to be treated poorly. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you and let you see the whole thing, because I think this would be a good guy to have And actually, I think both of these would be good people. The one I'm not real sure I understand, because see, this is like at congress.gov, you can see this, and this is the gay guy. But here it has the latest action is that 10/15/2019 received message of withdrawal of nomination from the president. So I'm not sure what happened here, because I do remember seeing him once before, and I think I covered it maybe in a previous video. I don't know. It's been a long time. So, I just remember his name. I remember his face, and it's like, I really think that he was supposed to be up for that before. But the date that he, the entire nomination was received from the president was 2/6/2019. So I don't know, maybe enough time had lagged or something that they needed to have another nomination. I don't know, but it says withdrawal. But sure enough, he was sitting there in the nomination, and that hearing was today as I'm recording it. So I don't know. I don't understand that one. Here's the guy that they were giving so much grief to, and that's what he's up for. And this says he was it was received from the president on 10/15. It seems like maybe he didn't have a whole lot of time, a lot of warning before he's put in there. But I don't know. And maybe that's why the ABA's letter about this didn't come in any sooner. I don't know. So much I don't know, but I try to learn. And so anyway, that's the situation. Again, here are the other ones. You could watch the rest of it. But compared to this first panel that took almost the whole time. But then again, these are for the Ninth Circuit, so that is going to take longer. These are for more district judges. These 3 are district judges. So wouldn't take probably as long, just because they wouldn't hammer them quite as much. So there it is. That's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.